curious, slightly hushed. Geopolitical rivals like Vladimir Putin are actively working to dismantle American dominance. Yet, to execute their daily global trade, they are constantly forced to use United States dollars. While the stock market and banking systems dominate headlines, they are secondary to a deeper architecture of global control. The true engine running the world economy is the petrodollar. Everything a modern nation does, moving cargo, flying, manufacturing plastics, keeping the lights on at night, requires a constant supply of oil. Because oil is universally required for survival and exclusively sold in US dollars, the system effectively forces every nation on Earth to acquire and hold US currency, regardless of their political allegiances. In 1944, at the Bretton Woods Conference, delegates agreed to anchor the post-World War II financial system to the US dollar. At the time, the dollar was tied directly to physical gold. Then came 1971.
President Richard Nixon severed that link. He transitioned the world to a fiat currency economy. A fiat currency is government-issued money, backed not by a physical commodity like gold, but strictly by public trust and economic stability. That trust was severely tested during the 1973 OPEC crisis. Arab oil-producing nations halted sales to countries supporting Israel in order to gain political leverage over the United States and its allies. The cost of crude quadrupled. Western economies faced immediate shortages, rationing at the pump, and severe, widespread inflation. A fiat currency requires constant, universal demand to retain its value. With the gold link severed and energy supplies weaponized, the dollar faced a vacuum that could only be filled by a resource every nation was desperate to acquire. The solution was a straightforward agreement. The U.S. would provide military protection and support to Saudi Arabia. In exchange, the Saudis would price their oil exclusively in U.S. dollars. Saudi Arabia was the dominant player in the energy market. Where they went, the rest of the major oil-producing nations had to follow. This loops through petrodollar recycling. First, a consuming nation like Japan acquires U.S. dollars. Second, Japan pays those dollars to Saudi Arabia for crude oil. Finally, oil producers invest those dollar profits right back into U.S. Treasury bonds, real estate, and American companies. This generates constant global demand for the dollar. It allows the U.S. government to borrow money cheaply, and it gives Washington the ability to wield heavy financial sanctions against adversaries because international transactions pass through American banks. The petrodollar forces the entire globe to finance the American economy. BRICS is a geopolitical partnership of nations like Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. They know the dollar restricts their power. So why don't they just switch currencies today? It comes down to high liquidity. High liquidity is the ability to move massive amounts of money instantly without crashing the market. The US dollar has the volume and the legal protections to handle billions at a moment's notice. Think of global finance like social media. You can build a competitor, but it is incredibly difficult to get users to switch platforms when their audience, data, and infrastructure are already entrenched in the old one. Escaping the dollar involves severe friction. A sudden switch disrupts decades of established contracts, complex insurance systems, and precise pricing models. Breaking away from the petrodollar is functionally impossible to do overnight because the global infrastructure to support a replacement is not fully built. Rather than attempting a sudden break, nations like China and Russia are executing a slow, highly selective strategy. They are settling specific oil transactions in alternative currencies like the Chinese yuan or Russian ruble, strictly in areas where they face heavy U.S. sanctions. At the exact same time, they continue to use the U.S. dollar where it remains convenient and efficient. They are exploiting the current system while quietly constructing a parallel network. And their strategy extends beyond oil. These nations are aggressively hoarding physical gold to dilute the dollar's underlying grip on global finance. The petrodollar is the invisible gravity holding the current world order together. As rivals test these parallel systems, the dominance of the dollar is shifting from a global requirement to a matter of infrastructure and convenience.